Afternoon, everybody. It's midday on Wednesday, which can only mean one thing. It's me and Steve with Wow Ergonomics. How are you, Steve?
I'm pretty good, thank you, Graham. We are 1 week closer to the return of children to school. So I think everyone's feeling a lot better, aren't they? There's a collective sigh of relief around the country as the offspring of the UK, or certainly England, are due to return on Monday or at some point next week. So I think we're all feeling a little bit better from that realization, aren't we?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's not been too bad for myself, I have to say, and I'll probably get stones thrown at me now, because my youngest have been in school.
Yeah.
You know, and that's because my wife is a critical care worker, and also it's pretty difficult from my point of view. It's pretty difficult to be trying to homeschool young people when you've got to do broadcasts. It doesn't really; those two things don't go together.
No.
You know, there are certain roles and certain jobs that you know, maybe allow you to be a little bit more flexible and sort of work around it, and then there are other things where it just doesn't work. So, but no, I'm glad they're all going back to school. I think from a socialization point of view, it's really important. I think any sort of damage to their education, shall I call it damage, or any kind of sort of falling off from their education has happened now. If it has happened, I think, to be honest, with the older ones, that they've been taught really well all the way through. I can't see that there is any deficit there, etc. There is talk of summer school though for some that have got a deficit.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see how they manage that. I mean, how on earth do you manage something like that? Because, you know, whilst we were told not to book summer holidays, lots of people have gone and booked them. So what then happens if you are offered a week or a set number of days for your child to go in and do that, and you've already booked a family holiday? It's the only time you can get off. Now, obviously, I guess it won't be mandatory, but, you know, it's I mean, that's just another issue that's sort of being kicked further down the line, isn't it? It's how on earth are you going to manage the whole process around that?
Yeah, well, let's just break that down for a minute. Actually, when we were told that we weren't to book summer holidays, I think we were told not to book. Predominantly, we were told not to book holidays abroad. I don't know that anyone was really told not to book, as long as it was in advance, a holiday in this country. I'm pretty certain that the Chancellor, who of course is doing the budget today, would be quite glad of the fact that we may actually stay in this country and spend a bit more money going abroad, and actually, you know, as that hospitality industry actually is allowed to kick back in, that we actually spend a bit of money in the pubs, etc. So I think the difficult thing, actually, because I did a poll on this.
Okay,
you know, I do a poll.
There's
on
everything. Surprise.
Yeah, but I think that the general thing was that there was a lot of feeling that it shouldn't happen necessarily from the teaching point of view, because teachers have worked all the way through this. It's a little bit. A lot of people felt it's a bit unfair for teachers to then have to work through their holiday, you know, and actually they perhaps need that time to prepare for next year, etc. And, you know, we're going to see burnout from teachers. So I think some of the unions might have something to say about any kind of schooling in the summer, etc. I don't know.
I mean, you're right though. Yeah, you're right about the teachers' breaks. I mean, I've seen some of my youngest sons in year 5, and I've seen some of his work being marked and returned on a Saturday evening or a Sunday morning. And, you know, it's I think there's a bit of a misconception that the teachers if the kids aren't in, the teachers aren't in. Absolutely, they are, and I think they're probably working as if not a lot harder than they have been previously. So, you know, you don't want to see their breaks, they need to go away and recharge their batteries and come away in September when, let's be honest, we're just going to this school year's halfway done, isn't it? Let's be honest. We just got to see it through and really come back on the 1st or the 4th or whatever it would be of September, all systems go really. And hopefully we are past these sort of extended school lockdown periods and really go for it there. But I think everyone needs the summer break. I think it'd be interesting to see how they do it. Will they do it through tutors? Maybe leaving the teaching community out of it. I don't know what the plans would be, but I can see some of the benefit. But I think it's probably got quite a few potential issues in the sort of the mechanics of it all working. But I think certainly for some children, if they need it, absolutely it should be there. But I don't think it's as straightforward as saying you're coming in this week or that week, because it may not necessarily fit with other plans potentially. But I think that the sentiment is certainly right. But whether impinging into the summer holidays of children and teachers is the right way, I'm not too sure. Maybe before and after school, bit of extra work here and there might be more appropriate than sort of digging into the holidays. I'm not sure. Yeah,
maybe. If anyone's got any opinions on that, please do use the comments if you're watching, and hit us up with your opinions on that, and we'll be happy to discuss them. Now, obviously, I mentioned earlier there today that it is budget day. The budget. So let's have a little chat about the budget then. So furlough scheme extended. We reckon that's definitely on the cards for today.
Back end of September was what was being kicked around late last night, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, and I think from what I gather that the main feeling is that, well, this should have always happened and it should have always been on the cards, and maybe it was just actually the Chancellor shouldn't have waited necessarily to the budget to announce this, because firms need to actually know where they are with things. But in terms of the furlough scheme, do you think it's going to be enough to help businesses? I watched a news thing last night about businesses in the West Country, and certainly a number of small business owners were saying that the main thing from their point of view was really sort of holding off on paying business rates again, and that kind of business rates holiday, and actually that just the furlough scheme in itself and some of the other measures that might come forward will not be enough if they end up having to pay rates again. Have you heard similar things from people?
I mean, it's not an area I'm sort of hugely versed on, but I've seen very similar sort of comments that you've mentioned there, Graham, around the business rates being quite crucial, because I think sometimes you can fall into the habit of thinking, well, if furlough's in place and it's paying wages, well, what else is a company paying out? Now, I know that's quite a simplistic way of looking at it, but that's been picked up by a number of organisations. I think the unions have picked up on that. I think people like the CBI and people like that, and a lot of leading businesses, particularly retailers. I think I was reading one of the main guys at Sports Direct was picking up on that and saying it's really crucial that whole business rate piece is looked at, because what's been hit the most by what the COVID situation. Yes, you've had massive impact on hospitality, but hopefully we can start seeing those sectors getting back soon. But parts of the high street have gone and won't be returning, will they? So I think it seems to be the high street where there's a lot of focus on is around business rates and actually structurally changing that going forward, because I think we're going over old ground potentially, but it's still very, very much an interesting subject. It's around the impact on the high street and what will town centres look like, because I think, yes, they were already in big decline. But I think we've said on maybe a call a few weeks ago that it's just been accelerated 5 or 6-fold, hasn't it? This change in the high street. So again, if we want that to still exist in some form, business rates is what needs to be tackled. I think back on the furlough piece, you'd like to hope if we do get somewhere around that 21st of June, if everything goes to plan and we get there, maybe we can get the hospitality sectors, the entertainment sectors, maybe we can get them back. Maybe they won't need to dip into the furlough scheme toward maybe that September the 30th is the absolute, that's really extreme cases. Maybe we can get hospitality, UK holidaying, staycations, whatever it would be. Maybe that will allow a lot of people to be taken off furlough a lot sooner. So maybe we'd like to think that the furlough numbers or people on that scheme will be dramatically reduced by September if hospitality, etc., which is one of the biggest draws on that scheme, is able to get up and running. So, people booking UK holidays, decent weather, hitting that 21st or whatever it is of June, if we can get there, maybe that will help. And maybe that's very much a safety net, but we can get it addressed before then.
I think the other thing that was quite interesting that's coming off some of the TV reports as well is that the different ways in which different companies are using the furlough scheme. So it's not as clear cut. Some companies are only paying, or some companies are using the furlough scheme and are actually saying to their employees, we can only pay you at the furlough rate. Whereas other companies, in order to maintain their staff, are still topping up the furlough with their contribution. So there are different ways in which employers are utilising that. And so therefore, I mean, there was a guy that owned a chain of restaurants on the TV last night, and he said, well, but we're still paying the 20%, and that 20% for us was, I don't know, I can't remember exactly what he said, but something like 560,000 or something over the period. It was a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
And he said, we got no money coming in.
No.
So whilst the furlough scheme is a massive support for businesses, I think depending on how people are actually using that, or having to use it in order to keep staff on the books, as it were, then they're still losing out. And the ramifications of this long term in terms of, and we've mentioned this before, what's going to happen in terms of taxes or interest rates and everything else, and how that's going to hit the consumer, 12 months down the line in their pocket, etc. That's when we really understand the full extent of this, I think. At the moment, what's happening is what's happening, and it's there to try and keep us from completely sinking. But I think we're all going to be a little bit shocked a year from now.
I think so. I mean, it's probably a bit too simplistic to say, but the quicker we can get back to people being able to holiday, able to shop, able to eat in restaurants, etc. The sooner we can do that safely, that just starts having an instant benefit, doesn't it? I think that's what the really important thing is. We've just got to get to that point. And if we can get, and normality isn't the right thing because it won't go back to what it was, but if we can all start socializing and doing things and spending money, etc. That's going to help, isn't it, really? That's what we really need to get back to. I do think, actually, going back and tying it into the schools piece, Graham, I think once school children go back, I do think that's the first sort of step in getting the economy moving again, because there are a huge amount of people who aren't able. You mentioned your children going into school, absolutely, under the key worker piece, but lots of people out there with both parents working who don't qualify for that, and are probably maybe only able to do 3 or 4 hours of their normal day. So once the children do go back, is that the first sort of boost to the economy getting back to normal, that actually the children are back in? You start getting the impact of the fact that the companies who supply the schools with food then start operating, their drivers start operating, there's a high demand for food in those areas. So it all sort of starts to, the snowball begins to start, doesn't it, really, with the return of schools? And we just need to hope that those dates that have been set out can be hit, and it just becomes very much a ramp up over the next 3 to 4 months. And of course, some good UK weather would be good. A nice warm summer. Those things can only be good, can't they? In a positive way. We've got to look at this positively. Those are the sort of things that can actually get us out of this and get us then going as we get into September and the later stages of this year and into next year.
Yeah, absolutely. We're throwing Adam's comment at this point. Yeah. Adam Cowper-Smith, thank you for your comment on teachers' pay. He's pointing out that teachers' pay is prorated. So actually, if teachers do this additional work in the summer, that it's of absolutely no benefit to them whatsoever from a fiscal point of view. And he said, will the government offer enhancements for teachers who upper end schools? So he's right.
And equally, some teachers might be more than happy to go in and do the work. So absolutely, they'd want a break, but it very much there could well be a big portion who actually would be quite glad to do that. I mean, not everyone necessarily wants a 6-week break. Yes, the kids want it, but actually a working professional might go, actually, 2 or 3 is enough for me. I'd really like to, because they're a dedicated profession with, focused on the children. They may be happy to go and do that, but absolutely they do need to be, their back pockets do need looked after as far as that's concerned.
And maybe someone could be creative with it. Especially, at primary school level, maybe it could be if that was a thing, maybe someone could use people that are learning to be teachers through the summer holidays. Maybe it could be part of teacher training experience. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too simplistic in that understanding of that. But at the end of the day, maybe there can be some creative ways around that, if it's absolutely necessary. Maybe it won't. But so it'd be interesting to see what the budget holds today. I'm pretty certain it will be one of these budgets where we won't actually get that many surprises.
No.
And we will know pretty much what to expect. I think there was some sort of cause as to why we didn't, why the Chancellor didn't necessarily take more stringent action last budget, knowing that and sort of announce furlough, etc., and be really sort of proactive on that in the last budget. But hindsight's a beautiful thing. And we are where we are now, and I don't expect any particular surprises today, but it will be interesting to see if there are any particular parts of the economy that are struck by this budget, and perhaps we'll come back to it again next week if there are any surprises. So
absolutely,
there may be. Now, one of the things that we picked up again on today from a poll that I did this morning was this still no DSE assessment. So for those that don't know, it's something we talk about most weeks, but display screen equipment assessment, or an ergonomic assessment at work, a workstation assessment, whatever you want to call it. 88% of people on the poll as of now are still saying I haven't had an assessment over the past year. Now, I did one of these polls just after the first sort of month or so of lockdown happening the first time, just to see where the lay of the land was. As I explained to people this morning, sometimes I do replicate the polls after a period just to see whether things have moved on, and whether we've actually managed to learn anything and move on in terms of where we are. But clearly it seems not, because we've probably got similar results this time as to last time.
Are you surprised by that number, Graham?
I'm not. I'm really not, to be honest. I'm saddened by that. I'm saddened by it because, at the end of the day, you'd hope with all of the effort that goes into trying to educate people as to why this is important, and to a certain extent why, it's a legality as well, that people might have actually taken notice. But I'm not surprised, because every day, as you and I both know, we come up against people that have absolutely no idea what a DSE assessment is, have absolutely no idea that they should be, as they're working for a company. I mean, clearly, obviously, if this doesn't apply if you're self-employed and you're looking after yourself, etc., you're in charge of your own health and safety and well-being. But if you're working for a company, you are under their auspice, and actually, it's a requirement that company makes sure, both at induction and then through your working life, that they touch. Basically, it's a touch base with you to make sure that your working conditions are suitable for the work that you are doing, and that if there is any impact on you from a physical or mental well-being point of view, that adjustments are made in order to accommodate you and help you work safely. And when you put it like that, you'd think, well, who wouldn't want to do that? Yeah. But clearly people don't. So are you shocked by it as a result?
No, and when I threw it back to you, the word that sort of came into my head was disappointed, really, because you'd like to think with all this extra attention that's been focused on working from home, and we've all seen stories around people who are having pain from it, and we've gone over the dining room table scenario where a lot of people are working and are still working, table too high, chair too low. I mean, I always think the dining room table is the one that really sort of highlights the issues, isn't it, really, because of that, because of the type of chair it is, at a dining room chair, and the sheer sort of dimensions of the table being so out of kilter with an office desk, that's where there's been so many problems. And I'm just sort of disappointed, really, that more hasn't been done to address that whole piece. I mean, yes, there clearly has been investment in this sector, but I think it's literally that it's scratching the surface. There are so many businesses and organisations still not getting involved in it, and like we've said before, Graham, we understand, like we've just touched on the budget and businesses struggling, etc. But let's be honest, there are lots of businesses who've performed very well from the pandemic in certain sectors. It's not every business that's struggling, but it's not. But this seems to be an across the board situation where there is really, really limited focus. There are lots of organisations out there who we know who will offer remote assessments if people aren't comfortable with people coming to their house. It's not a lack of resource for me in terms of people doing the assessment. I think it's a lack of either knowledge or desire for businesses to go and really invest and support their people working from home.
Well, I think this is the interesting thing, because actually, if you take it from the point of view of the first time I did this poll, I could actually see then that one of the issues, having sort of been a workplace assessor myself, and knowing that things had kind of dried up on the commercial workplace assessment side for a while, that one of the issues was that no one really knew how this mechanism was going to work, because typically a workplace assessment was done in the office, and it was done by an assessor visiting the office. And we moved into a period where we were all locked down, and there was a feeling that, could we take this online? Shall we just wait? Maybe this will be over sooner rather than later, and therefore, this is a temporary measure. And even we saw that within the HSE sort of changes that were happening on the guidance on the website. That initially they were talking about temporary measures, and then that disappeared because they realized that this wasn't a temporary measure, etc. This was going to be a longer term situation, and we were all in flux with that. But the point is, now we're a year on, and we know what the roadmap is. We actually we've got a better understanding of the roadmap out of this, but we've also got an understanding that there's a lot of people that, for one reason or another, will not be returning to office space work anytime soon. And actually, I'm going to throw this out there as well. I just wonder within all of this, because the spotlight has been turned on this, something I've known for years as well, which is how many businesses, even in the office, actually bothered.
Yeah.
This
very few.
The spotlight has been thrown on this more because this is affecting people at work at home, and individual people have realized, this is not right. This is not comfortable. I need this sorting out. But how many companies have just never bothered with a workplace assessment at home as well? So we got some more comments. Again, Adam's back. I'm pleased to say the two companies I've worked at, Endy and Sodexo Integrator, have rigorously imposed DSE and HSE. Brilliant. Thank you for that, Adam. I'm glad to hear that. Mark Rigby says, afternoon, guys. Let me know if you need any soap trivia. Not today, Mark, but you'll please wade in when it comes to DSE. And Alison says, Adam, that's good that HSE covered too. It's so often the missing piece for home workers. It is. But Adam, you are in the minority there, I have to say, rather than the majority. So it's interesting that companies are still not seeing this as a relevant piece. I just go back to what I've always said about it, which is if you were thinking about this from a health and safety professional and your business was not office-based work, but it was in a factory, you'd be all over it. Yeah, you'd be absolutely all over it.
All sorts of things.
You would not be letting people use various machines in a factory without properly risk assessing how they use it. Are they comfortable using it? Do they have the right equipment to use it, etc., etc.
Graham, does that not come back to what we've said before, though? The regulations around DSE are guidelines, aren't they? Where what you're talking about there is hard and fast rules. So what we're saying is if someone's working in a factory with a piece of machinery that could cause long-term injury, there is the risk and threat of fines and whatever it would be to directors, etc. But if you're an office-based worker using a piece of equipment that could cause long-term physical damage, same thing, it's a guideline. Therefore, there's no fine, there's no issue, there's no comeback on the directors, etc. So therefore, that's the crux of the problem, is it not? Is the fact that the whole DSE piece issued by on the HSE website is not the law; it is a recommendation.
Yeah,
is that not the crux of the problem?
It is really, and I think the sooner that people start to realise as well that working at a computer is dangerous. Not because you're going to get electrocuted,
no.
Although you could, but from a point of view of what it can do to you if you do it long term without doing it properly, etc., without the right breaks away from it, without the right kind of movement away from it, etc., in terms of musculoskeletal issues, back problems, migraines, eye strain, etc., it is actually dangerous. Okay, nobody thinks about it as being dangerous because it's not like you sit down in front of a computer and go, if I do this wrong, it's going to cut my finger off.
Yeah,
but it has long-term, real physical side effects if you don't do it properly. So and anybody that's been an assessor, that's been out there and that's actually seen people that have been at a computer for 30 or more years, have not worked in the right way, haven't had the right guidance, haven't had the right advice, and has ended up, virtually, unable to live life properly because of that, knows what the impact can really be. So
I'd love to know. Yeah, I'd love to know, Graham. I'm looking back at the companies that Adam called out, NG and Sodexo. I'd really love to know or hear from the person in that business that made the decision to do the DSE assessments. And you know what I mean? Almost to understand, okay, what is it that made you think that is so important to do when it is just a guideline? Because they're the sort of active reference organizations you need to almost drive and encourage other people onward. So what was it about? What was it they felt was the reasons they needed to do something that was just a guideline? And that would be really interesting to find out what they think, what was part of their sort of policy, their culture. And then maybe we can understand from that, okay, well, if that's why are other people missing out? That clearly isn't part of their culture and their dynamic.
There's a task for Adam Adam, if you're still listening, if you could find the person that made that decision within that business, and we'd love to get them on the show another week just to understand the culture behind the business that makes that positive decision, because I think that's really important for other companies to hear. And it's a good advert for that business as well, in terms of obviously getting their culture on point. So that's really, really important. Just to finish off on this particular subject, I think the other thing that we talked about earlier before we came on air is that one of the other reasons why some companies may not have gone for the assessment piece is because they've just thrown money at it. And they just think, we have just offered to buy people equipment and that's fine. But I just have to say, it's the wrong way round. Whichever way you look at it, it's the wrong way round. Yes, I think it's important that you provide equipment, and in certain bits of equipment, I think you can say, this is a good starting point. Let's provide everybody with a laptop Razer. Let's provide everybody with a mobile keyboard and mouse, so that they can sit properly wherever they are. But that doesn't stop you from doing the assessment piece. And the assessment piece is separate. Always in this piece is always separate from the provision of goods, and ultimately it's just benchmarking and indexing at any particular point in that person's career with you. What is their health like from a physical or mental point of view? Are you supporting that person properly? Have they got the adjustments that they need to be able to work safely, or not? And therefore, what intervention do you need to put into place? And you can't align that to product. That has to be a separate piece. And as someone pointed out on the poll earlier, and thanks for pointing that out, it doesn't have to, in the first instance, that doesn't have to be an expensive piece. You may need the help of an experienced assessor with certain people that then pop up and have problems. But from an auditing point of view, you can do it in a form. You can literally do it on a Google form and just make sure that everybody signs off to say, these points have been covered. Now, I'd always say that doing it with an assessor is probably better, and you'll probably get a better response from each of your people, because you tend to find that when people fill in forms, they do it to please the people in the company that are giving them the form.
Is that what he wants me to say? Yes, I'll tick that.
Exactly. But from a legal standpoint, even if you made this thing on a piece of paper, gave someone a pencil and got them to fill in some boxes, you would be covering yourself. And if it shows you at the end of it that there are a certain proportion of people in your company that are not feeling the support or the love at the moment, then that's got to be worthwhile in order to then be able to help them out individually. So I think we've said it till the cows come home, but I'm very surprised. No, I'm not surprised. I'm very disappointed, as you say, that there is still no DSE assessment being done by lots of people. With that in mind, someone that wants to get everybody back to the office is Goldman Sachs.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, you read the article and you can sort of understand, and I've seen there's been another article come out as well recently about, people have had enough from working from home, and to be honest, that's probably right. I think a lot of people, full-time working from home in a lockdown with children at home is not what people envisage as work. So I think to a point, he has a point, but like we've covered on previous weeks, and I think we discussed last week around stealth pay rises and things like that. That's all very well wanting this nice, let's all go back to the office, but I don't think actually people want it full time. They want some sort of mix, don't they? So I think it almost felt like a bit of a rebellion, that comment, against what a lot of people are doing. It almost felt like, no, we're not doing it that way. We're going to do it this way. And I think there'll be a lot of pushback on that. I think people will be delighted to go and interact with people socially as part of their week. I still don't see a lot of people wanting to return to sitting behind a desk in an office in a city centre with a commute on either side 5 days a week. I just do not see it happening, Graham. I mean, for me, for the people I speak to, people I interact with, I just don't see it. I just don't see it being something that people want. Yes, they want some of it. They don't want all of it.
Now, to be fair and bring balance to the force in all of this, he may know his people really, really well. And he may really understand his company culture really, really well. And I think one of the things that that was said in the Goldman Sachs sort of statement was that, you know, this kind of working from home doesn't work with our company culture. And maybe it doesn't. Maybe it doesn't work for them. And I think we have to acknowledge that there are going to be some businesses where actually the working from home piece doesn't marry up with the company culture. But I'm going to go back to something I've said before here. Two things. One is for some of those companies, and I'm not saying necessarily Goldman Sachs, but for some of those companies, is your company culture right?
Yeah.
Now that's you know, may feel like an attack on some of these people, but you have to question: is your company culture right? If you've got people in your business who, when you start asking them, want more flexibility, want hybrid working or want flexible working, etc., and your style of doing things doesn't really allow for that. So have you either taken on the wrong people and it's about the wrong fit, or is there something wrong with your company culture? And I think a lot of businesses have got to ask themselves that at this time. You know, have we got the company culture right? Now, you'd be hoping that actually in this period now between now and when we start to actually see a lot more businesses head back towards the office, that businesses are reaching out to their staff and are asking their staff what they actually want, as opposed to assuming that they know what their staff want. Because those are two very, very different things. You'd hope that within a business where they actually have a really different management structure, where people work in teams more than they work in a hierarchical structure, and where people are, you know, collaborating on a daily basis, communicating on a daily basis, and there's almost an equality. There's a good equality within a team, that actually management will actually already understand what their people really want and what's there. If a business doesn't understand that, you'd be thinking, well, do they not need to actually look inward a little bit and think, I don't actually understand my people, and I don't understand this want for working from home or hybrid working, and I need to take some advice on how to move forward as a business. What's your view on that?
One of the things, I know we've spoken about this subject probably for the length of the pandemic, and one of the things you've always mentioned to me is around business structure and business management, isn't it, really? And I think a lot of this is going to be is potentially businesses working from home may not fit in with their current business structure. And a bit like culture, maybe it's the business structure that needs to change to integrate working from home, because, you know, I think people have generally enjoyed it to some degree. They've enjoyed the flexibility. We've seen productivity level, or if not increase. So from a business perspective, a lot of it is very positive. I think businesses may need to look at their structure and potentially their culture, as you said, and their ethos, because if they're almost poo-pooing it, as it were, actually, is that the right thing to do? And one of the things I think we kicked around last week or the week before was around staff retention. The interesting thing will be, and we're not just, we mentioned Goldman Sachs as they were the article, but I'd love to know for companies who insist on people going back to the office 4 or 5 days a week when they can, you'd love to see what happens to their staff retention. That they surely from a HR perspective would have to be looking at from a staff retention piece, because those organizations that offer flexibility or continue to offer it long term, you would think are going to be able to hang on to talent and B, attract talent. Those organizations that insist on returning to work for considerable periods, if not whole of the week, against the will of a lot of their people, you're going to look and think they're going to start having a very high staff retention. So almost it's okay to say we don't want it and we're not going to do it. But I'd love to know 6, 12, 18 months down the line, how much that changes when they start to see the impact of that regulation around their staff.
Yeah, I mean, let's take it on a very personal level. I mean, obviously, I will be allowing my staff to work from home because I work with me at home.
Yes.
So that will happen. But Steve, I mean, you work within an organisation. You were typically out on the road previous to this. I mean,
4 days, maybe 4 days a week. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, throughout this whole period, presumably you've been sort of touching base with your managers, etc. I mean, you've been having conversations around this. I mean, do you feel like, in respect, that's actually worked out quite well, that you've together gone on a journey in terms of, well, let's have thinking about this sensibly together, what can we learn from this, and how can that restructure the way that I work in the future? Is that not the way that management should be working with people?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, we're going forward, I think it will be less time out on the road. Out on the road, seeing people is still very important, but I think it's probably made, I know a lot of us in our organization, so my colleagues in France and the Netherlands and Germany, etc., we've looked at our activity and gone, actually, we could be more effective with that type of work by maybe doing it via a Teams or a Zoom call rather than going out and physically seeing someone in person, because actually someone seeing you in person it may not suit them either. So you have to look from both sides. Does it work for me? Does it work for the person I'm going to see? So I think going forward, we will probably, I would never say we'll be doing 2.5 days or 3.5 days. I wouldn't put a number around it. I'd say it would allow a lot more flexibility to go, actually, could I be a bit more effective with that piece of work or with that project by doing it remotely while still recognizing there's things I need to go and do face to face. So I think it probably has led to us all to almost challenge everything we're doing. Where in the past picked up the car keys and headed out the door, maybe thinking, actually, could I be more effective for me and for the person I'm seeing to get the same, if not a better result, by maybe having a 15 or 20 minute call that would fit into my diary as a work home day. So I think it's allowed us to do it, and I think it's probably identified areas. But I've spoken to other people who I would previously go and see are saying the same thing back, to say, actually, you know what, Stephen, we'd normally say meet with you once a month. We still want to see you, but going forward, we think it should be every 3 months. And therefore, we're still going to have that social interaction, but we're just going to replace some of our activity with a different way of communicating.
Yeah, exactly. And so therefore, I think it's about you've assessed that situation. The management have decided that ultimately this hasn't actually changed the interaction that's there in terms of effectiveness. So it's now a case that you can actually ask the question. I mean, that's what it boils down to. You can now ask the question prior to any visit with anyone, whereas before you would just be thinking, right, tomorrow I'm seeing Graham. I'm going to get in the car. I've got to drive down to the West Country. I've got to think about who else I'm going to go and see. I've got to plan my route. And that's what I'm going to do. Now you can go, oh, okay, Graham, I need to update you on this. Can I schedule a call with you? And then if in the throes of that conversation, I go, well, I really need to see this at some point. You can go, okay, well, next time I'm within the area, then we can do it. Stephen, you've turned into a circle.
Sorry.
There you are.
I do apologise. Right. Technical glitch.
Technical glitch
in the room.
It was for anyone listening on Spotify. Stephen turned into a little circle there for a minute. He was no longer a human being. But so yeah, I think it will go that way. Thanks to all of the people that have been throwing comments in today, especially Adam.
Absolutely.
You've been writing essays, sir, which is brilliant.
You can come again.
Yeah, come again, sir. Bigger organizations tend to have the processes in place, but it is still dependent on managers to deliver it, and most of them simply don't understand what their responsibilities are. That's really, really interesting, isn't it? A lot of them do not understand that display screen equipment assessments need to be carried out. And where do we?
How do we tackle that message? How do we tackle that then? Yeah. I mean, who leads it? Who leads it? Is it the industry? Is it the government? I mean, is it a combination? It almost feels like we're talking about it and we'll carry on talking about it. But how do we change it? Can we influence it? Do we need someone else to influence it and change it for us?
Well, I think we have to find ways of influencing and changing that in two ways. So I think on the one hand, I think it's down to bodies like some of the ergonomic chartered organizations, etc., to actually maybe push for more legislation around it. I think it's also around not necessarily taking it all from an ergonomics point of view as well. So I think maybe some of it is to do with talking to companies about culture and change as much as it is to do with health and safety. So I think it's a two-pronged attack, really. I think it's so covering all the things that we're talking about. On the one hand, explaining to people that there is a real health and safety risk here if you don't do it. But on the other hand, there's a real opportunity here, which is that actually, why wouldn't you want to be doing it? But actually, and it's something I've always talked to businesses about with regards to this. I've always said, you don't want to be doing this in a reactive way. You want to be doing this in a proactive way. And actually, you want to be thinking about it not from the health and safety perspective necessarily, but actually from a culture perspective. What is it that you want to achieve as a business? And if part of that is to grow the business by building a team of people who actually really love being at work and are aligned with your objectives as a business and believe in your ethos as a business, then one of the key things that you should have as one of your objectives as a business is to make your people healthy and happy. Yep. Because they're the people carrying your business forward for you. And maybe beyond that, actually promoting as a business health and well-being. He said that's a really good title, isn't it? Because if that becomes an objective of your, part of your objective as a business is to actually promote on a worldwide scale as well, health and well-being, then you have to see that in action with your people. And if you look at some of the bigger businesses that are supporting this scheme and are supporting their staff properly and are building great cultures, it's a no-brainer for them. It's an absolutely no-brainer for them. They are doing it because they want those people to prosper within the business so that their people prosper, and their business.
Do you know what, Graham?
Just
going to what we were talking for, which sort of links in with this. We talked before about the lack of DSE assessments and things like that. But I always remember a conversation I had a few months ago with an organisation that had about 1,000 people across Europe, and they'd gone down the route of giving people money, which to me is the worst thing that is one of the worst practices that's happened out of this is expecting individuals at home to be able to buy the right equipment. But when I asked why they'd gone down that route and not to identify a range of solutions themselves, they didn't want to get involved in the almost the asset management of accessories, be it desks and chairs and all the other things whatever you want to get into. But again, going back to the fact around larger companies being more organized, etc. And we mentioned there about people being qualified and being aware. This organization I spoke to didn't want to take on the responsibility of asset managing things kept at home. And that again sort of staggered me really, that they were quite happy to just give people the money. So we're happy to invest, but the way they didn't have to take on any responsibility or put management processes in themselves was to say, well, you buy it on expenses or whatever, and it's yours. It's nothing to do with our business. So again, that was one of the things that came out. It sort of disappoints me with this whole giving people money. Is it just a way of copping out of actually managing the process properly?
Well, I'll tell you what, here you are for a start. Hey, there's some great asset management pieces of software which are really easy to use these days. So it's a bit of a cop out anyway.
Yep.
And secondly, the other thing is that, in terms of that, get your people the right guidance, get them an assessment, get them the right equipment at home, etc. Get them to put it on the asset management system. All right. And if you involve your people in that process and you're doing it to make your people happy, and they will want to get involved in that whole process, then, the bit about, but then what happens if we have to recall that asset because that person leaves the company, right? You're thinking about it from the wrong point of view right from the start. You're already thinking about, what if that person leaves the company? Well, is that person not the right person to be in the company in the first place? Exactly. If you really believe in that member of staff and you think this member of staff is going to be a tremendous asset, ultimately, if they work for you for 4 years or whatever, and they do a tremendous job and whatever, and at the end of the day, you lose a chair and a desk and a laptop, does it really matter? Because it was part of the the package that made them work effectively for you for that period of time. Yeah. I mean, and ultimately you've actually, by doing it the right way and trusting them, etc., you're more likely to keep them long term anyway. So it's the whole asset management thing. What an excuse. There you go. A few other things. Mark Rigby said, quite interestingly, employers are happy to spend on training of software, but not on the ergonomic interaction of said equipment. So isn't that interesting? So it's it's fine. Businesses think, well, yeah, someone doesn't know how to use Excel. Let's get someone in to teach them how to use Excel properly. Someone doesn't know how to use this database. Let's get someone in to train them on this database properly. How to use Oracle. Spend a fortune on that, but not necessarily in terms of how to use all of that equipment safely.
Yeah.
What? Why would you?
It's crazy, isn't it? Crazy.
It comes back down to it's a similar analogy to yes. As a business, I am willing to buy you a brand new BMW, Stephen, but I'm not going to. Yeah, absolutely. But I'm not going to prepare. I'm not prepared to pay you to learn how to drive it, and you haven't got a driving license. So that's great. You've now got a lovely car, but you can't drive it.
Yeah.
What's the point? It's almost that ridiculous. Adam keeps going. Management training that actually teaches managers how to manage rather than sending them on courses, which they do reluctantly, but don't ever understand how to apply it in their responsibility as managers of people. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely that. I mean, you've got to have buy-in. The thing is, and there's a problem actually in part of what you've written there, sir, which is the word managers. I think the sooner we actually understand teams in businesses rather than managers and subordinates is the better for everybody. And I love reading articles about businesses where what they've done is they've taken those hierarchical structures and their hierarchical names for people within the business, and they've thrown them in the bin, and everybody has a name that actually explains, or a business title which actually explains what it is that they do within the business, what their skill set is, and what other people can come to them for, as opposed to where they sit within the business. Because who cares? You might be CEO of a business, you might be COO of a business, CIO, all these little abbreviations. But ultimately, what your worth is within that business is what you're good at, and ultimately what you're bad at as well, so people understand what you don't want to be involved in. So I'd love to see more of that. I'd love to see CEOs with creative titles, where people on the outside, you're still going to be called a CEO because the big bad world understands that, but internally, I'd rather someone be seen as chief instigator of social content or something.
There's a great one, Graham. Our friend Dave Blood at Posture People on LinkedIn has himself down as chief buyer of biscuits. I'm sure is what he puts himself on LinkedIn. So again, sort of recognizing his key function in his job is making sure everyone has biscuits. So Dave down at Posture People clearly recognizes where his strengths are.
I know. I saw that Guy Osmond had actually taken him up on that this morning, because he had a big order in for chairs, and he said, so you're now in charge of buying as well. I hope you can live up to that responsibility. I thought was quite funny. But ultimately, I think that he's right to do that there. I think what he's saying is that he is, he's picked something which is potentially quite lowly in terms of a title there, that he's in charge of the tea and biscuits. But what he's saying is, I ultimately want to be part of the team. I don't want to be seen as this person that's above everybody. I want to be seen as someone that will make the tea and biscuits. And I think as good leaders within business, everybody needs to find that way. And maybe that's part of this, with this whole DSE and ergonomic side of things as well. Maybe if we start to find managers that would say, how do I want to be treated within the business? Now that I have been working at home and I understand the rigors of it, wouldn't I want a decent assessment? Wouldn't I want, if it's right for me, wouldn't I want a decent chair and a decent setup and a decent desk and decent lighting and everything else? And if I want that for me, don't I want that for all of my team?
Yeah.
Because this team are my family. This is who I spend my working days with, day in, day out. Sad but true. But we quite often in the business life, we actually spend as much time or more time some of the time with the people that we work with than we do with our actual family. So if you want to build a great team, you need to build a great family. That you work with. And if these were family members, you wouldn't be thinking, oh, it's okay just to here's some money, just buy whatever rubbish you want, because I'm not really interested in your health. Of course you'd be interested in their health. There we are. Look at that. We've been on a bit of a soapbox again today, which is great. If for next week, if you've got a subject that you want us to tackle, please do contact me on LinkedIn. Give me something that you want to put into the show for next week, and Stephen and I will happily talk about that. If you want to appear on the show, you think you've got something to say and you would like to join us, this is a platform that you can come and join us on. So we'll happily have you up here to discuss something. If you've got time next Wednesday at the same time, I believe we're doing, then do contact us again and we will happily send you the link so you can come and join us on the show. Now, before we go, the last health and wellbeing event on the 25th went really well. So we've got another one coming up very shortly on the 25th of this month. Here's the poster for it. Our first speaker announced, Fatima is coming to talk to us on executive nutrition. I know very little about nutrition, and that's why I said to her, we want to get you on. So if you want to get hold of a ticket for that, you can head over to the website www.abetterwayoflife.co.uk. It's down the bottom of the screen at the moment. You click on the online events and you'll see the poster for that, and it says book a ticket here. So it's all absolutely free, but anyone that's been to it will say it's a really great event. At the end of the day, we aim to learn from each other about different disciplines in the health and well-being sector. So yes, it's for ergonomists. Yes, it's for physios. Yes, it's for occupational health therapists, managers of anybody, staff-wise, nutritionalists, dietitians, you name it. If it's about health and well-being, we've probably got someone there that's represented. By learning from each other, we can actually support staff better, and that's what it's all about. So thank you very much for joining me again, Stephen. Thanks for that, and me, and we will see you all again next week. This will be available on Spotify for you to listen to at your leisure, and if you're already listening, you know that. So bye for now.
Thanks.